If I had to sum up Assassin's Creed Mirage very simply, I'd say I loved the sneaking around and assassination, I absolutely hated the face-to-face melee combat, and the enjoyment you might get out of the story will entirely depend on whether you've played through Origins and Odyssey before coming to this game. I'll explain all why later without giving away any spoilers, but first up, what is Assassin's Creed Mirage? Mirage is set in medieval Baghdad, and you play as Besim, a wannabe thief who one day steals the wrong thing from the wrong people and unleashes the greatest evil the world has ever seen. Oh no, wait, hang on, that's the D&D movie intro, but the idea here is actually very similar. Besim then becomes a master assassin after a little bit of training and tries to put everything right by bumping off victim after victim and taking contract after contract, running around the streets trying to take out these high-value individuals in the hope that he'll find clues that will lead him to the arch-villain at the centre of this mysterious puzzle and answer a few questions about his background that he's a little fuzzy about. Here the developers have tried to go back to the old style of Assassin's Creed games, where the focus is much more on stealth and assassination, rather than huge, great big sprawling open worlds with melee-style RPG combat. The game world is a lot smaller, the adventure is a lot shorter, it doesn't take anywhere near as long as those previous titles. And whether that's better, well, that's down to your personal preference and likings, but it was the reason I came back to Assassin's Creed after not really enjoying Origins and the direction the games went in. I missed the next two, came back for this, and that caused a bit of a problem with the story, which I'll talk about later. The game is open world, and you can take on the missions and contracts and quests in any particular order that you like, with some limits obviously on the end game of the story. Besim has his trusty hawk, which he can use as his eyes in the sky to help him spot enemy patrols and avoid a little bit of trouble with the law. And speaking of avoiding trouble with the law, that is actually one of the key aspects of the game. As you do unscrupulous activities, maybe a bit of pickpocketing or just all-out murder in the open streets of Baghdad, you'll become wanted in those areas, and you'll be recognised by the civilians running around who will shout for guards, and the guards will come and try and take you down. And then it becomes a chase across the rooftops as you're dodging arrows and diving into baskets and doorways and anything, trying to get out of the way of the following police. You can, of course, pull down wanted posters, which is a nice touch to try and reduce your wanted level in the area, which helps a little bit. But yes, the idea of this game is less about just brute strength and brawling and fighting and combat, and much more on sneakiness and stealth and assassinations and not getting into trouble in the first place by being spotted. As you play through, you get to upgrade your gear, and there's some skill trees which you can invest skill points into to improve various aspects of your character. Much more on this later on. By the way, I streamed the entire playthrough of Assassin's Creed Mirage live on this channel, so I'll leave a link down in the description. You can go and check out some of the gameplay if you like, and you can see my live reactions to certain key moments in the game. And I try and stream all the games that I review on this channel and on Twitch, so if you want to watch more and see my reactions live as we play these things and discover them for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and come and join us for some live gameplay. Alright, onto the graphics, sound and performance. I thought the visuals on this looked pretty good. I can't really fault anything too much. I'd just come off the back of playing Baldur's Gate 3 coming into this, and the only thing that I noticed, because we were spoilt in Baldur's Gate 3, the facial animations in the cutscenes of that game were absolutely perfect. They were amazing. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, they are still pretty good, but unfortunately now, well, we've had a new bar set, haven't we? So they are not amazing, like Baldur's Gate 3, but they're still pretty good. And overall, I thought the city looked quite nice, and everything looked fairly pretty on my rig. You can see the specs down below in the description if you want to read about the hardware I was playing on. When it comes to the sound, I thought the voice acting in this was all pretty good. The voices were spectacular, actually, and one of the key features of the game. In fact, one of the main characters in this is voiced by one of the actresses from The Expanse, if you've seen that. And I'm going to make a mess of pronouncing her name. Shora Agdashlu? I don't think that's how it's pronounced, but she's got a very distinct, deep and dark and husky voice. And when you first hear it, it's very striking. You can never miss it when you hear it. But it is absolutely awesome, and I could listen to her voice in this game all day.
Welcome, Hidden One. You have died and been reborn. Now, fight me as your equal.
And performance-wise, it was generally okay playing at 1080p with all the settings turned up to max. There was a couple of moments when the frames did slow down, but the game was fairly new out when I played it, and maybe that'll get patched out. But overall, performance was absolutely fine. Okay then, on to the good stuff. What did I like about Assassin's Creed Mirage? Well, the highlight of this game for me was the stealth gameplay. This is what I loved about my first visit to an Assassin's Creed game years ago, back playing Black Flag, the pirate one. Sneaking around, hiding in the bushes, trying not to be spotted by the guards patrolling areas. I absolutely loved that. And then the assassination, where you take one out, you try and drag him into the bushes to hide his body, you can whistle to distract them, to call them over, try not to get seen by their mates. All this was one of my favourite aspects of Assassin's Creed that I felt was sadly missing from Origins and, well, I presume from Odyssey and Valhalla. I didn't play those on that strength. And I'm glad to say that that's all back here. When you're having to get into a really secure compound like a palace or a castle or a barracks or something in this game, you really have to plan your way around it. You have to spot the guards, you have to watch for the patrol routes, you have to see where you can hide. And I absolutely love that aspect of planning of how to get through the game without being seen. Of course, it does go horribly wrong, and then it's a chase for your life through the city because the combat is functional but not fun at all. More on that later. But the stealthy side of the game was something I really, really enjoyed and would happily play it just for that. I've also mentioned the voices and the language. It's a different thing in this. There's a language that we don't normally get to hear in video games, and it's performed beautifully, and I really, really enjoyed it. Adds a lot to the atmosphere of the game, but it's just something different, and they do have quality voice actors for most of the characters in this, so it is very pleasant to listen to in the cutscenes. The city itself also looks really nice as you're running around. There are slummy areas, there's market areas, there's temple areas, there's wide open deserts outside, although they're a little bit empty, but the city itself, I think, looks great, and running across the battlements and diving into moats, yeah, I liked all that. That's where the good stuff ended for me, so let's go and talk about the bad stuff. And I'm going to open this with my number one complaint about the game, the combat. Oh my god, the combat is so disappointing. If anyone's played the older Assassin's Creed games, and I can date back to Black Flag, because this is the one that I really enjoyed and played, the combat in that felt super exciting and epic, where you're frantically trying to dodge and block and parry and counterattack and riposte and then turn around and shoot the guy behind you whilst fending off an attack from a guy at the front. It was superb, and it's that sort of fighting that I had missed. That is not present in Assassin's Creed Mirage at all. Combat is one attack, one button, spam it at the enemy. When they glow red, dodge. When they glow gold, try and parry. That is it. That is it. There's nothing else to it. The combat is so utterly basic in this that it is extremely mundane. And that's when it's one-on-one. There's a huge problem I find with the combat when you're playing one versus multiple enemies. And it's partly to do with the camera angle and positioning, because you have to have the camera facing the one you're trying to attack to be able to dodge and parry for them. But if someone else is coming in from the side or behind, and suddenly they raise a weapon to attack and you want to dodge it or parry that, well, it's not going to work as well. And I found this utterly frustrating, and I pretty much hated every single fight where it was me versus more than one opponent. On one-on-one, the combat was manageable, but it was dull. I mean, like, really dull. But against multiple opponents, it was just utterly frustrating and not fun at all. And also, I felt like you were animation locked as well sometimes. When you try to go through a move, but then you suddenly see a guy behind you attack, and it's going to be at the wrong time, and you know you can't parry because your animation's not going to finish in time, and you get hit. And then you get stun locked, and the guy in front of you hits you because you're in the animation for being hit. And, oh man, it's super frustrating, super disappointing. Also, when it comes to combat, there's no big boss battles in this. I mean, not really. There's one type of enemy that you'll see running around, which is not one that you can insta-kill from assassination, and that's the only one in the game that you can do that. But there's no big boss fights, there's no big confrontations. In fact, the big bosses that you do have to take out, the targets of your contracts for the story, you can assassinate them in one go, and it's extremely simple, which is absolutely fine. But this is part of the problem as well. There's nothing super and exciting about the actual fighting, ever. Also, there's no real variety of enemies in this. There's such a limited number of guards. You've got archers, spearmen, big heavy swordsmen, and then these other things that can, I don't know what you call them, they can run really fast and chase you down and you can't kill them with one shot, so you can't even assassinate them from the shadows. They can cause some problems. And to add to this, I've got a great big problem with the gear and the loot system. Let's talk about actually looting better gear first. You can buy some items from the traders in the game, but there's big loot chests that are hidden around the game. These are going to be weapons or weapons upgrades. And sometimes you can see where they are, and then it's your puzzle to try and work out how to get to that chest. It'll be behind like secret doors, or there's a specific way through a building to get to it, where you've got puzzles to unlock and actually get to the chest to get out a schematic which will either upgrade one of your current weapons or grant you a new one. I never found any of the weapons an interesting upgrade, or the armor, or the daggers, any of the gear. I found it really, really dull. I mean, I suppose when you can one-shot any normal enemy guard from stealth with an assassination, which is something I really like, by the way, I just want to point that out, then it kind of seems pointless upgrading the weapons and armor and gear, especially when the combat is so utterly miserable and not fun in the first place. There's things that make a few small differences. But going back to these loot chests, when you go and get one of these schematics, it can take a lot of effort to actually figure out the puzzle to get into them. And some of these chests are hidden in mission-specific areas where you can see where the chest is, but unbeknownst to you, you won't be able to get into that until you start a mission later in the game, which opens one of the doors, which allows you into the area to get there. I had huge trouble. I think I spent about 2 hours on stream trying to get one of these chests in the bazaar area of the city, and it turns out that area wasn't even accessible until later in the game. So I thought I was trying to figure out this really hard puzzle, and no, I wasn't. I was just blocked out completely, and I felt utterly annoyed with that later. But anyway, back to the chests, because you'll get a random piece of random upgrade out of there, and it might be for something that you don't even want to use or don't like using, and you don't know until you go and find the chest and open it. And that is also frustrating and annoying, that you've wasted a load of time to get something and you think, I don't want that, it's awful. Unfortunately, the same goes to the skill system in the game as well, which I didn't find very interesting. I felt like it was actually missing a tree. You've got a tree in there to upgrade your eagle, so it can spot things better and pick out guards quicker and stuff like that. There's one in there to upgrade your tools and stuff, which I suppose that's kind of useful, unlocking more new tools like smoke bombs and poison darts and stuff which you can have some fun with. And the stuff that can upgrade your stealth abilities. What I feel like it was missing was a tree that maybe upgraded your combat abilities, which added more stuff in for face-to-face combat for players who actually want to go down that route. And I only really found one upgrade in the stealth tree, which really felt like it was anything important, and that allows you to do chain assassinations from stealth, which is actually really good and changes the way you play the game. But aside from that, all the skills felt kind of boring. So the gear and the skills were both very disappointing for me in that respect. I never felt like I was upgrading the character, but fortunately I could just carry on playing how I liked, assassinating people from stealth, sneaking around, drawing them into ambushes, and that really felt like how the game is designed to be played and how you're going to enjoy it the most. And the other thing that I had a big problem was with the story. Now, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but there are two issues I had with this, really. The first is that when you get started in the game properly, you can choose which enemies or which villains or which contracts you're going to go after first. Because you can go and do these in any order once you discover where they start, nothing really flows on. Everything is like a little story in itself, and before long you start thinking, why was I doing all this? Who was I looking for? Why am I trying to find clues to lead to someone else again? And it kind of feels a little bit disjointed. But that's only the smaller issue. The bigger issue with this is that if you haven't played Origins and Odyssey, you won't have a sodding clue what the game ending means whatsoever. Now, I had played Origins a few years ago and I didn't like it, so I skipped Odyssey altogether. And apparently there's stuff in Odyssey which would make the ending of Mirage makes sense to me, but none of it is explained in the game. Mirage is supposed to be a standalone game, and the fact that they've changed the play style from the previous ones would think that it's there to entice people back who weren't interested in Origins and Odyssey. But the problem is, some key aspects of the game are not explained as you go through it for the story, and I was left scratching my head at the end thinking, what the flying F was that all about? And people in chat on the stream had to explain to me from the other games for it to make any sense whatsoever. And that, I think, is a big letdown. Fair enough, if it was an expansion to one of those games or a DLC, you'd expect to have to play through and know the story. That is a failing of the game and the storytelling, I think. And it meant that the story to me felt like it was completely and utterly pointless. So, in conclusion, should you buy Assassin's Creed Mirage? And the answer to that is absolutely not, but that doesn't mean you say you shouldn't play it. Let me explain. You see, this game, when it was released, I think was £45 on from Ubisoft, or maybe on Steam as well. And for the amount of time it takes to finish this game, I feel like that is quite a lot. So a much better deal, if you want to play it, apart from waiting for a massive sale, obviously, is you can actually subscribe to Ubisoft's monthly service. I think it's at Ubisoft Connect. That cost me £12.99, and I got the game finished in about a week of starting playing it. So that was a much better price and a much better deal and a much better way to enjoy this game if you think you're going to enjoy it. On that note, if you like stealthy gameplay, sneaking around, assassinations, planning your moves through camps and barracks and palaces and stuff like that without getting seen, then you'll probably enjoy this. But the issues with the combat, if you're not very good at stealth, you'll find yourself in combat a lot. The issues with the combat really spoilt the game for me. And the story ending itself, which, because I hadn't played through Odyssey and I can't remember a lot of what happened in Origins because I got fed up with that too, the story made no sense. And therefore, I didn't enjoy that aspect of the game. So this game for me is definitely play it cheap or wait for a massive sale. However, I do like the direction they're going with the gameplay, and so maybe I'll start playing future Assassin's Creed games again. So anyway, I hope you found this review useful, and don't forget I stream all the games I play and review on this channel live, so come and join us for some chat and help me form some opinions on whatever game we're going to be playing next. Hopefully, I'll see you there.